Madam Clerk, you may call the case.
Case number 2008 CF-15606, State Court of Jason Anthony.
Okay, will the parties please identify themselves for the record, please, starting with the state.
Linda Drain Burdick and Frank George for the state of Florida, Your Honor.
And the defense.
Cheney Mason with Liz Pryor.
Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
Sorry for the delay, but had a morning docket and I'm trying to take as many pleas as I can. All right, we're here on the state's motion for assessment of investigative costs. Ms. Burdick, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. As the court knows, Ms. Anthony filed a notice of appeal of her convictions on counts 4, 5, 6, and 7 in case number CF-08-15606. That vested jurisdiction in this matter in the 5th District Court of Appeal. They have since relinquished jurisdiction by order dated August 23, 2011, in their case number 5D112357, in order for this court to hear this matter this morning. I provided a copy of that pleading to Mr. Mason, and I had also forwarded a copy to your assistant. Has the court been advised of the 5th District Court of Appeals action?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. In light of that, before I called a few witnesses to the stand, I wanted to give the court some idea of the scope of the hearing so that we can narrow the issues before you. As indicated when I filed our motion to tax costs, we are seeking reimbursement for the necessary costs of investigation and prosecution that are causally related to the offenses or the counts for which Ms. Anthony was convicted, pursuant to the statutory authority that the court has as set out in Florida Statute 938.27 parens 1. I had provided to counsel yesterday, as well as the court, a packet of cases. I see that you are holding those up for me. The first case that I placed in that packet is Davis versus State, found at 42 Southern 3rd, 807, a 1st District Court of Appeals case from 2010. I included that and put it first for the court's consideration only for an explanation, a brief explanation of the limitations that have been placed on the court in determining what are the appropriate costs of investigation and prosecution that can be considered at this juncture. As indicated in Davis, the only costs of prosecution, and I'll put that in quotes, that can be at this point eliminated from the court's consideration are those associated with the judicial administration costs, such as the court salaries, the clerk costs, the court reporter costs, state attorney's costs, salary costs. Otherwise, the case indicates the court has broad discretion to determine the amount and the type of cost to be assessed against a convicted person. Again, for the purpose of this hearing, the law enforcement investigative costs that we will be seeking include only those from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation, and the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Inquiry was made of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and they have declined to provide us with any information to seek costs on their behalf, so they are not making a specific request as required under the statute for us to do that. The same is true of Orange County Corrections. A specific request was made of them. Their position was that 938.27 parens 1, the reservation of jurisdiction under that statute did not include the ability for them to seek the costs of incarceration of nearly 3 years of Ms. Anthony. So we will not be presenting any evidence for those agencies, Your Honor. In a moment, you will hear from some representatives of the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. I had filed shortly after the sentencing, I believe within 3 weeks of the sentencing, documents detailing the costs of investigation of both MBI and FDLE, as well as the Sheriff's Office and the State Attorney. The costs have been narrowed in scope. The FDLE and MBI costs are necessarily narrowed because their activity occurred between July 15th of 2008 and December 19th of 2008, and they functioned as agencies assisting the Orange County Sheriff's Office. The Orange County Sheriff's Office as well has limited their request for costs to those salary costs of the employees at that office who the employees of that office who engaged in investigative efforts from July 15th, 2008 through December 19th of 2008. I would note that the request that was submitted to us and presented to the court on their behalf does not include any patrol expenses or any expenses that were involved in assisting private entities such as Texas EquiSearch or the volunteers who searched for Kaylene Marie Anthony. They have limited their request to the time from when Kaylee Anthony was reported as stolen by the babysitter to when her remains were identified, and that she was no longer a, quote, missing person, whether that be missing and alive or missing and dead. The expenses of the Office of the State Attorney are primarily, as indicated by the pleadings, court reporter expenses associated with pretrial discovery depositions, witness travel expenses, and expert witness billing and travel. The issue, we believe, for the court at this juncture is whether and how the court should apportion expenses based upon the counts for which Ms. Anthony was convicted. We'll ask that you consider not only the testimony of the witnesses that will appear before you today, but the documents that we will formally move into evidence at the appropriate time, as well as some of the testimony given at trial as to the work done by the various witnesses documented in those pleadings that were involved in the investigation. And with the court's permission, I will call my first witness.
You may proceed.
The state will call Randy Means of the Office of the State Attorney, Your Honor.
I do. You may proceed.
Thank you. Please tell the court your name and occupation, sir.
Randy Means. I'm the Executive Director for the State Attorney's Office, 9th Circuit.
In that position, are you the individual responsible for maintaining the records of various items billed during the course of a prosecution?
Yes, I am.
Again, in that capacity, did you cause to have members of your staff collect invoices regarding case number 48-2008 CF 15606, State of Florida versus Casey Marie Anthony?
Yes, I did.
Have you had the opportunity to review those records yourself?
Haven't reviewed each one of them, just the total amount of them.
All right. In addition to the actual invoices that were generated, did you cause your staff to create a summary of those documents that you have reviewed?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with what's been marked as Composite Exhibit A for identification?
You may.
Let me have you take a look at that item. We can turn to page 2 after the notice of filing. Is this a summary of the expenses of the Office of the State Attorney as represented by the invoices that follow?
This appears to be the same.
I have no objection, Your Honor.
There being no objection, it will be received in evidence as states numbered.
Number 1.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no other questions for Mr. Means regarding the invoices of the Office of the State Attorney.
Cross-examination, Mr. Massey.
Ms. Means, you did not participate in any of this trial, did you, sir?
That's correct.
Do you know what crimes Casey Anthony was convicted of?
Yes.
What were they?
They were check-related crimes and lying to law enforcement.
Where did you get the idea that there were check-related crimes associated with this proceeding?
I did not.
Do you know, sir, that in count 4 of the indictment, Miss Anthony was accused of telling a falsehood to Yuri Melich on July the 16th of 2008?
I don't know the particulars of the counts or the guilty parts of it.
You don't know what it is that she was alleged to have done and which she was ultimately convicted of in count 4?
No.
Same as to count 5?
Correct.
Same as to count 6?
Correct.
Same as to count 7?
Correct.
Did you participate, sir, in any of the depositions that were taken in this case?
No.
The invoices that you reviewed that are now in evidence, sir, reflect various expenses for multiple court reporting services. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you know the purpose or substance of any of the depositions that were taken that are in evidence as number 1 for the state?
I do not.
Also, let me make sure I'm correct. Ms.
Yes.
Burke, that includes the invoices for the experts as well. In the package that's in evidence you put in, sir, do you acknowledge that there were various invoices for expert witnesses?
Yes.
Do you know which, if any, expert witnesses had anything to do with count 4?
I do not.
Count 5?
I do not.
Count 6?
I do not.
Count 7?
No.
Do you know from the total of the invoices for the state of Florida, sir, what the breakdown is of the expenses for these expert witnesses?
Repeat that again, please.
I'll try it again. You've got some that are invoices for court reporters, various ones,
Yes.
and some for expert witnesses.
Okay.
Did you do any analysis or break down the amount of money that is attributable to the individual expert witnesses?
The only thing I did is just took a glance and highlighted the numbers that were court reported, and by far the majority of the cost or the majority of the entries were court reporters.
The allegations of the indictment as to these convicted counts, sir, claim crimes occurring on one day, July the 16th of 2008. Is that correct?
I do not know that.
All right, sir. Fair enough. Do you know, sir, when your office indicted Miss Casey Marie Anthony?
I don't have that information with me.
Do you have any reason to dispute it with a date other than October the 14th of 2008?
I do not.
Do you know whether or not there were any services for court reporters rendered or obtained between July the 16th and the date of the indictment, October the 14th.
I'd have to look at the files to know that.
Would you have any reason to deny my representation that there were none?
I would not.
In fact, sir, in looking at the documents that you have verified, isn't it true that there were no depositions taken in this case in the entire year of 2008?
I would have, again, go back to look at that in the invoices that are received.
Okay. The documents are in evidence, Your Honor. Rather than take the time to go through every one of them, I know you will have assistance doing your work. You always have. Do you want to belabor going through those 3 inches of invoices?
That's up to y'all. Eventually, I have to go through every last piece of paper, Mr. Mason.
It's Labor Day. I have no further questions of Mr. Mean.
Redirect?
No redirect, thank you, Your Honor.
May Mr. Means be excused?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Means. You may be excused, sir.
The next witness is William Moore.
Here's my stuff from the FBI.
Swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Please tell the court your name and occupation.
Agent William E. Moore, employed by the City of Orlando Police Department, assigned to the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation.
Were you working for the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation back in July of 2008?
Yes, I was.
As a result of your association with that agency, were you asked to assist the Orange County Sheriff's Office in their investigation into the allegation that a child by the name of Kaylene Marie Anthony was missing?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell the court briefly what your role was in that investigative effort?
On July 22nd, I was asked by the Sheriff's Office to look at the cell phone records and try to do some analysis and ascertain if there was possible locations to go look for Zenaida Gonzalez or the baby, or just to try to pinpoint a location.
All right. When you're referring to cell phone records, you're talking about the cellular telephone records of Casey Marie Anthony?
Casey Marie Anthony, Anthony Lazaro.
Various associates of Ms. Anthony's in an effort to gain some information that would assist in locating Kaylene Anthony, correct?
That's correct, and possibly corroborate or determine if there's an alibi.
Were you asked, as a representative of the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation, to document your time spent assisting the Orange County Sheriff's Office, as well as the time of any other agents with the Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation in this endeavor?
Yes, I was.
If I may approach the witness, Your Honor.
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as composite exhibit for identification C. Have you take a look at that? Tell me if you recognize it as something that you have prepared.
Yes, I prepared this.
That is your signature at the bottom.
It is.
Can you tell the court what this is?
It's a summary of costs of investigations from July 22nd, for myself, from July 22nd to July 14th, 203 hours, and 3 other agents from July 22nd through August 28th, and also the costs for electronic surveillance.
Okay. You have included in the packet the orders authorizing the installation and use of the pen register, as well as the invoices for that, correct?
That's correct.
You've also included your weekly attendance record from the Orlando Police Department that supplements your summary to establish the number of hours that you devoted to this.
That's correct.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce C for identification into evidence.
I have no objection, Your Honor.
It will be received in evidence as states numbered.
Once the remains of Kaylee Marie Anthony were located in December of 2008, did your assistance to the Orange County Sheriff end?
It did, and then subsequent to that, or after that, it was trial prep. That's it.
All right. That's all the questions I have for the agent, Your Honor. Thank you.
Cross-examination, Mr. Mason.
Morning.
Morning.
Yeah.
all the way, and then trial prep thereafter to July 14th of this year.
You were not, strike that. Were you involved in any capacity in trying to deal with forensic evidence related to the allegations of first-degree murder?
Say that again?
Were you involved in any of the forensics dealing with the allegations of first-degree murder?
No.
Aggravated child abuse?
No.
All your time, and you're saying, related solely to time records or phone records of what?
Well, we're trying to, at a certain point, things didn't look like they were going to be what she was claiming. So then we started looking at areas of interest and using those cell phone records to compile those areas to go look for a body.
So the time spent by you after August the 22nd would have been what, administrative time or trial time or something?
A phone call here or there, trial prep.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor. Thank you.
May Agent Moore be excused?
You may.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Agent. You may be excused, sir.
Your Honor, the next witness is Jack Massey.
I do. Which one is it? It's a small bit.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may proceed.
Please tell the court your name and occupation.
Jack Massey. I'm a special side of special agents doing investigations and analytical work.
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this time to any further presentation by the FDLE. Unless there's a different one. The motion filed by the state tax cost says Sheriff of Orange County and Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation and no reference to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement at all. That's the pleading.
Verdict.
Your Honor, if that is the case, we will amend the pleading. The request was for the cost of investigation of law enforcement. I had, you can show it to me as well. I had also provided counsel with these documents. We can file an amended pleading since we're still within the time frame. They have had sufficient notice. They've had sufficient notice of the documents. In fact, Mr. Mason and I at one point were talking about stipulating to these costs. He's taken a deposition of this individual. There's no surprise as to which costs we are seeking to tax.
Mr. Mason.
It's not a matter of surprise, Your Honor. She has to be instructed. It's a matter of pleadings and law. The state of Florida and the proceedings has not filed any plea seeking relief with respect to investigative costs of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Do you have any objections to the state amending the pleadings? And the basis of the objection to amendment of pleadings?
Not following the law.
Is there any prohibition in Florida law to amend the pleadings?
No, she's entitled to plead and amend at least once without permission, and at the end of the evidence, she tried to convince you to allow her to amend and conform to the evidence. As of right now, I'm making my objection because the pleadings for what we're here do not include that.
Now, Have you had an opportunity to review and take the deposition of the representative of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
I have.
You said you have? I didn't understand you, Mr. Bates. You say you have?
Yes, oh yeah, I have. I have taken his deposition and I have looked at the documents that the prosecution gave me.
And what prejudice would the defense suffer by permitting the state of Florida to amend the pleadings? As you know, you can amend an information even after a jury has began to take evidence, as long as there is no surprise or prejudice that were newer to the defendant.
I do not believe that prejudice is an element. It is a question of due process. When pleadings are filed to bring a lawsuit, you've either pled for it or you haven't. And at this point, I'm objecting to them proceeding with that. And whether you allow her to amend to conform is a different story.
Okay. Noting objection, noting the defense has not shown any type of prejudice, the court will permit the state to amend the pleadings. The pleadings will be amended to reflect what? So there will be no misunderstanding as to what the amendment is. So we take your time and state it on the record.
Your Honor, the amendment would be to conform with the notice of filing in this case on July 27th of 2011, that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement has made a specific request under the cost of investigation statute for reimbursement for their activities in connection with the investigation instituted by the Orange County Sheriff's Office regarding Ms. Anthony's statements to them that her child was left at a particular location and not returned, i.e. that she was stolen by a babysitter. This then resulted in an effort by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to locate the child. They have submitted itemized costs of $71,939.56, which this witness is about, with the court's permission, to explain.
I will grant the request to amend pleading, but ask that you follow that up in writing, tracking what you've just said here in court.
I would suggest you didn't need to say all that. she could add FDLE on the wherefore and left, and whatever.
You may proceed, Ms. Burton.
Thank you. Can you tell the court whether or not you were asked to assist the Orange County Sheriff's Office in an effort to locate a child that was reported as stolen by Casey Marie Anthony?
Yes.
Can you tell the court when that investigative effort commenced?
The middle of July of 2008.
July 17th, 2008 sound accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, can you tell the court what it was that you were assisting the Orange County Sheriff's Office with?
On around that date, we were asked by the Sheriff's Office to provide analytical assistance. FDLE sent over 5 analytical members over to the Sheriff's Office for several weeks to assist with leads that were coming in. And those leads were documented into a leads tracking system, which we offer to the Orange County Sheriff's Office to keep track of their leads. So 5 analysts went over there, assisted with the entry of probably about 1,500 leads.
Okay. Aside from entering leads, did the analysts with your agency that you supervise participate in any other investigative endeavor?
Yes, there was one analyst that did the analytical work related to the timeline and in reference to a cell phone of Casey Anthony.
Okay. Were any of the leads that were being received by the Orange County Sheriff given to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to follow up on?
Yes.
Okay. tell the court about that process?
The process was, once the lead was entered into the leads tracking system, it's a web-based system, there was an FDLE agent assigned to assist the Orange County Sheriff's Office. The Orange County Sheriff's Office would get a lead if it was out of the county area, but within the state of Florida, that lead would be transferred to us and assigned to us. Subsequently, a leads request was done in our reporting system, and I would delegate those leads out to the impacted areas of Florida.
All right. How many different regions are there with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
There's 7 regions.
Were all 7 regions impacted by the assistance that you were giving to the Orange County Sheriff in an attempt to follow up on these leads?
Yes, ma'am, they were.
Okay. Would it be accurate that 53 Florida Department of Law Enforcement agents throughout the state followed up on leads received by the Orange County Sheriff in an effort to locate Kaylene Anthony?
Yes.
What system does the Florida Department of Law Enforcement have to track the time and activity of the agents or civilians that you employ, and determining how much of that time has been devoted to a particular case?
It's called our Automated Investigative Management System.
How does that work?
It is basically a timesheet, and once a member works on a particular case, whatever hours they work, they have to attribute in our system to a specific case number.
Was the case number assigned to this investigative effort by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement OR-20-0069?
Yes.
With a opening date of 7/23 of 2008.
Yes.
If I may approach the witness with what's been marked as Composite Exhibit D, identification.
Stipulated disability of states number 3, Your Honor.
Well, let me move into evidence then what has been marked for identification as D.
There being no objections by the defense, based upon that stipulation, it will be received in evidence. It states numbered.
Number 3.
May I approach the witness with number
You
3
may.
evidence? Can you take a look at the pages subsequent to the notice of filing? And explain, if you would, to the court what it is that is being shown in that document. I believe there's a separate filing in the court.
Was this the document that was submitted and delivered to my office from FDLE with a cover letter dated July 25th?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can you explain for the court what it is that is being documented there?
This is our system where we document our human resources in our system. The first date has the activity date, the member name, whether they're sworn or non-sworn, the specific activity they were doing during the hours, which are to the right, their pay rate, and then the hours calculated, hours rate of pay, and then the benefit factor added to that is basically the estimated cost of insurance, Social Security, and things of that nature.
Okay. Does that document show the activities of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in any particular chronology?
Yes, it's by the day, the beginning. It's by date. Date of the activity.
Was the activity of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement limited to assisting the Orange County Sheriff's Office in entering and following up on leads as to the location of Kaylene Marie Anthony?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no other questions of the witnesses.
Cross-examination.
Mr. Massey, the automatic printout, or not automatic printout, but the computer program that you all have,
Yes, sir.
the information goes in, and we're looking. Do you have it to look at in front of you? Did
No.
you just take it away from him?
Yes.
No. No, sir.
I believe so.
Cost care analysis with detail.
On the first page, the first activity date is July 18, 2008. Okay. Yes.
Mr. Massey, counsel just asked you about the details of activities here. Can you tell me what were the activities on that very first entrance that the judge just read, July 18, 2008, by Jennifer Rose Baraduce?
Baraduce.
And the next thing it says sworn in, that means not a law enforcement officer, right?
Correct.
Okay. The N's and the Y's don't mean whether they were sworn as far as under oath or not. They're either sworn officers or not.
Correct.
Okay. Now, and it says analytical activities. What analytical activities were done on that day? Do you have any idea?
Specifically, no.
And in fact, if I were to ask you the same question as to every single item for every single claim of expenses, you could not tell me what they actually were, can you?
Some of them I can, some of them I can't.
All I see anywhere is investigative activities, analytical activities, supervisory duties.
Yes.
Okay. So, are you in here anywhere?
I don't believe I am.
So any and everything else you would know would be based on what?
Be based on I was the supervisor over the squad that helped facilitate the leads that came in.
Are you familiar, sir, with the counts for which Ms. Casey Marie Anthony has been convicted?
No.
Do you have knowledge from your agency's involvement, sir, when it was that the Sheriff's Department learned that Casey Marie Anthony, in fact, was not employed at Universal Studios in 2008?
No.
So you don't know whether or not Yuri Melich, Appling Wells, and John Allen confronted the defendant at Universal Studios on July the 17th, and she admitted she didn't work there. You don't know that?
Not on July the 17th, no. No, sir.
Okay. Did you or your agency have anything to do with verifying whether or not apartment 210 in Sawgrass Apartments was occupied, and if so, by a person or a claim of a name of Zaneta Fernandez Gonzalez?
No.
Did you or your agency have any involvement with investigating whether or not there was a person named Jeffrey Michael Hopkins?
No.
Or Juliette Lewis?
No.
Or whether they had been told sometime by Casey Marie Anthony about the child's disappearance?
No.
Did you or your agency have anything to do with investigation as to whether or not Casey Marie Anthony received a phone call from the child, Kaylene, on July the 15th at approximately 12 p.m.?
We had, I know, a agent at MBI that had something to do with phone calls or phone analysis. I'm not sure if he had anything to do with that particular incident.
But your agency did not.
Correct.
That's counts 4, 5, 6, and 7, Your Honor, for which the defendant has been convicted. Would you look then, please, at your cost analysis with detail? Well, first of all, a little predicating question while you look at it. Do you know what day the Orange County Sheriff's Department got its first report from Mr. Roy Crock that he had located the remains or perhaps remains of the child?
No.
Are you aware that he called the Sheriff's Department on August 11th, August 12th, and August 13th?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is not relevant to the issue of costs of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. He's testified to the scope of their involvement with the Orange County Sheriff.
The fact remains is there's several levels of where any costs will be reasonable or not.
Objection overruled.
Are you aware, sir, of those dates and calls to the Sheriff's Department?
No.
Are you aware of the date of the indictment in this case?
No.
If you will look at your sheets there, sir, can you turn to a small print? If I can do it, I know you can. Can you get to the page there where you get into October?
Yes.
It's on page 11 where October begins.
You see about a little over an inch down, item number 1, 2, 3, 7. There's an entry on October the 14th for Denise Nevers.
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware, sir, that was the date of the indictment?
Now that I see this, yes, I am aware of that.
Are you aware that in the indictment, Casey Marie Anthony was charged with first-degree murder of Kaylene?
Yes.
So, and at the same time, in the same papers, charged in these counts 4, 5, 6, and 7 of various lies on July the 16th to Detective Uri Mellis. Are you aware of that?
No.
So then all of the rest of this exhibit from the MBI of expenses from that point I just showed you is after the indictment, after October 14th.
MBI?
I'm sorry. Your involvement with the FDLE.
Correct.
All of those items on your list here, the exhibit in evidence, from that point is after the indictment.
Yes.
And do you know, sir, by another point, whether or when the remains of Kaylene Marie Anthony were found?
I think December 11th, maybe?
Yes, sir. If you look on the next to last page of your document, and you see where there were activities up to that day?
Yes.
That'd be the 9th line down.
Mm-hmm.
And you acknowledge, therefore, that all FDLE activities after the remains are found would be everything after that line on this page, whatever this last page is.
Yes.
Have you done any analysis of the numbers, sir, for those increments, like how much time was spent by your agency between July the 18th and August the 13th?
No.
Have you done any analysis, sir, of how much time was spent by your agency from July the 18th through October the 14th, date of indictment?
No.
Have you done any analysis to break down what the time was spent from the beginning through the finding of the remains on December the 11th?
No.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Redirect?
No redirect. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You may be excused. return that exhibit. Thank you. State me call the next witness.
Kaylene Talamas.
See if that is.
You want to ask her about the indictment?
Yeah.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Please tell the court your name and your occupation, and spell your name for the record if you would.
Leona Kaylene Talamas, Orange County Sheriff's Office Payroll Manager, Leona Kalene Talamas.
And what are the functions of your job?
My job is to make sure that the time people enter is correctly paid.
Were you asked by members of the Orange County Sheriff's Office to provide payroll information for those individuals who worked in any aspect of the case involving the alleged disappearance of Kaylene Marie Anthony?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell the court what information you provided to those individuals?
I provided the employer cost, which would be the FICA Medicare portion of the employer and the Florida Retirement System portion. I also provided the rate of pay for that period of time for each employee.
Now, the employer costs are different depending on whether or not the individual involved is a sworn officer or a civilian?
That is correct. The Florida Retirement System has one rate for a special risk person, which is 20.92%, and a different rate for a regular position, which is 9.85%.
Now, the rate of pay that you provided for each of the individuals is simply based on whatever their salary is, correct?
That's correct.
Do you have knowledge as to whether or not the Orange County Sheriff's Office has a general order as it relates to the rate of pay for which they would seek costs of investigation reimbursement?
Yes.
Do you know what that number is?
I'm sorry, I don't know that right now.
If I may approach the witness room.
You may.
Yes, it does. 16.1.11, general order.
As for deputy sheriffs, what is the standard formula for the recovery of investigative costs?
For deputy sheriff, the formula is 31.53 per hour.
And for civilian employees?
Depending on what they were doing, but there's the criminal data processor, 22.27 per hour, and a DUI breath test. Oh, that's just the test, sorry.
Recovery for testing costs is also listed on that order.
Excuse me, Counsel, you have a copy of that?
One moment, please. If I may, Your Honor, continue.
Yes.
The rates of pay, however, that you provided were the actual rates of pay of each of these individuals,
That is correct.
which would be less than the interim order suggests.
For the most part, yes. Yes, I was.
Can you tell the court what information you provided to those individuals?
I provided the employer cost, which would be the FICA Medicare portion of the employer and the Florida Retirement System portion. I also provided the rate of pay for that period of time for each employee.
Now, the employer costs are different depending on whether or not the individual involved is a sworn officer or a civilian?
That is correct. The Florida Retirement System has one rate for a special risk person, which is 20.92%, and a different rate for a regular position, which is 9.85%.
Now, the rate of pay that you provided for each of the individuals is simply based on whatever their salary is, correct?
That's correct.
Do you have knowledge as to whether or not the Orange County Sheriff's Office has a general order as it relates to the rate of pay for which they would seek costs of investigation reimbursement?
Yes.
Do you know what that number is?
I'm sorry, I don't know that right now.
If I may approach the witness room.
You may.
Yes, it does. 16.1.11, general order.
As for deputy sheriffs, what is the standard formula for the recovery of investigative costs?
For deputy sheriff, the formula is 31.53 per hour.
And for civilian employees?
Depending on what they were doing, but there's the criminal data processor, 22.27 per hour, and a DUI breath test. Oh, that's just the test, sorry.
Recovery for testing costs is also listed on that order.
Excuse me, Counsel, you have a copy of that?
One moment, please. If I may, Your Honor, continue.
Yes.
The rates of pay, however, that you provided were the actual rates of pay of each of these individuals,
That is correct.
which would be less than the interim order suggests.
For the most part, yes.
Okay.
If I could just...
Is there an explanation as it relates to that?
No. On some cases it would be more, in some cases it would be less.
Depending on their salary.
Correct.
If I may approach the witness with what's been marked as Composite Exhibit B for identification.
You may.
Yeah, okay.
And if I can have you look at page 2 of that, the summary of expenses on this cost recovery worksheet are the items that are listed across the top as ER costs, those that you were referring to.
That is correct.
Okay, and then the rate of pay in the next column.
Please, starting with the state.
Linda Drain Burdick and Frank George for the state of Florida, Your Honor.
And the defense.
Cheney Mason with Liz Fire.
And those pleadings that were involved in the investigation, and with the Florida versus Casey Marie Anthony.
Yes, I did.
Do you know what crimes?
Now, have you had an opportunity to...
Documents that the prosecution gave me.
And what prejudice would the defense suffer by permitting the state of Florida to amend the pleading?
Okay. Aside from entering leads, did the annual filing in this case on July 27th of 2000...
Followed by the state tax cost says Sheriff of Orange County and Metropolitan Bureau of Investigation and and no reference to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement at all. That's the pleading.
Verdict?
Your Honor, if that is the case, we will amend the pleading. The request was for the cost of investigation of law enforcement. I had, you can show it to me as well. I had also provided were you the individual with the Orange County Sheriff's Office responsible for collecting the hours worked by the various individuals within your agency on the case of the state of Florida versus Casey Marie Anthony?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Right. Can you tell the court what it was that you did in this regard?
Back in December of 2008, Lieutenant Irwin accumulated this.
Who was this?
Lieutenant Matt Irwin was my counterpart before I had this position. So he was in charge of the investigation. So back in 2008, he had the detectives complete the cost investigation recovery sheets. So basically, I inherited a spreadsheet that had these hours already logged in. So what I did is I provided these hours to each individual and asked them to verify for accuracy, which they did.
All right, a cost of investigation recovery sheet, is that a form that is utilized within the Orange County Sheriff's Office on a regular basis?
When we seek cost of investigation, we do use that. That's correct.
It is true, is it not, that the Orange County Sheriff has a general order as it relates to the recovery of investigative costs?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it the policy of the Orange County Sheriff to seek reimbursement from defendants as to investigative costs to ease the financial burden of the cost of investigation upon the citizens of Orange County, Florida?
Yes, ma'am.
In response to that general order of the Orange County Sheriff's Office, of the Orange County Sheriff, you've indicated to the court that Lieutenant Matt Irwin had asked various detectives and civilians with your agency to compute and sign investigative cost expense reports.
Yes, ma'am.
If I may approach the witness with what has been marked as B, a composite for identification.
You may.
If I could have you take a look at those documents. Tell me if you recognize those.
Yes, ma'am. This is the package I completed and submitted to the State Attorney's Office.
Okay. It also includes what you referred to as a spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet of some sort.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you tell the court how that summary was compiled?
First thing I did is I went to our fiscal unit and asked Ms. Talamas to compute everybody's hourly wages. She used a form that also included benefits, and I don't know exactly. She provided me the outcome. What I then did is took the number of hours that each individual worked and times by whatever rate she gave me, that came up with the sum that each person was we're going to seek reimbursement for.
Okay. Now, were you or did you give any direction to the individuals who either in the past had completed or completed at your upon your order their summaries regarding their time and when to basically cut off that time?
What I did is I used the time frame of July 15th, which is when the original 911 call came in, and we went to the point of the week of December 11th when the remains were found and recovered. So I only wanted the hours worked during that time frame.
During that entire time frame until the remains of Kaylene Marie Anthony were located and subsequently identified on December 19th of 2008, did the Orange County Sheriff's Office consider Kaylene Marie Anthony to be missing, whether that be missing and alive or missing and deceased?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
each of the costs affidavits that you obtained from members of the agency, are those data compilations part of the public record of your agency?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you cause to have the signature of each employee affixed in his or her official capacity?
Yes, I did.
At this point, I would seek to introduce
I'm not going to object. Did you do the general order? Were you going to? Or you didn't want to do it? Okay, no. Composite, no objection.
It would be received in evidence as State's Exhibit number.
Your Honor, at this juncture, I have no other questions of the witness. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Pretty sure I understand what you said, but I want to be real clear on the record.
Yes, sir.
You began your process, and why you're here today, with information you first received from Major Irwin.
Lieutenant Irwin.
Lieutenant Irwin. I'm trying to promote him.
Right.
He's gone. Not with the Sheriff's Department anymore.
No, sir.
And then when you got his records, you went behind them to verify the accuracy and authenticity of the time records submitted by deputies. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so you called in, do you have it in front of you?
No, sir.
Let me give you the service. Department number 4, please. If you will turn to the spreadsheet right under your letter, the worksheet.
Yes, sir.
The one with the real small print.
Yes, sir.
Now, sir, I see that spreadsheet is divided into several different categories.
Yes, sir.
Who made the decision of dividing the accounting into these different categories?
I believe when I came up with the spreadsheet, I put it in according to units to make it a little bit more accurate, easier to read.
Do you have this one filed with you also, sir?
I don't.
Was that filed?
I believe it was filed with the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
Just a second.
Notice of filing. Should have been the beginning of August of this year.
No, I don't have that one.
Okay. Sir, the first several entries, 7 deputies, I gather. John Allen, Mellich down through Sharon Clark. Can you?
That's correct. They were the personnel from the missing persons unit at that time.
Okay, that's the missing persons.
Yes, sir.
Then there's the next category of homicide.
Yes, sir.
Another category of child abuse.
Yes, sir.
Another category of forensics.
Correct.
Another category of sex crimes.
Yes, sir.
Another one of computer crimes.
Okay, both sides ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Massey may continue your cross-examination, sir.
Thank you, sir. Lieutenant, we have before you once again the exhibit of investigative costs, Sheriff's Department.
Yes, sir.
Again, the page is not numbered, but it is in fact the intention or the policy of the sheriff's department to stop accounting for investigative costs as of the date the child's remains were found. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, sir. That was the time frame I came up with.
December the 11th, 2000.
A week of, because the crime scene folks were out there longer than the 11th, so I think until like the 19th.
Well, now you're saying not December the 11th, but a further period of time?
Until the remains were totally collected. That's the time frame that I was asking people to give me the hours they worked.
And the remains were being collected by CSI people?
Yes, sir.
Corporal Eric Edwards was not recovering remains, was he?
No, but he was one of the full-time investigators on the case at that time.
Were you aware that in his time sheets, investigative expenses, he has included hours from August of 08 through December the 18th, at least a week past the remains being found?
I believe that was the week when they were recovering the remains.
And do you have any knowledge about the specific activities that he or any of the rest of these folks did when they have listed hours of work and it says investigation report? So you don't know specifically what he did or did do?
Some I do. I have a general idea.
Well, are you aware that I may have asked you already? Just forgive me, I'll hold this right.
Yes, sir.
Now, what do you say?
I'm sorry?
The fact of the matter is that Casey has been convicted only of counts 4, 5, and 6, dealing with allegedly telling false statements to your bench. You aware of that?
That's correct, sir.
Oh, okay. And you are aware that the indictment charge of July the 16th has those dates, right?
I'm sorry, July 15th? 16th? Okay.
You have any questions about that?
No, I don't know what you're referring to. Is that that's the beginning of my time frame? Is that what you're asking me to define?
Okay.
Okay.
And you are aware that, in fact, by the end of the day of the 17th, Ms. Anthony had acknowledged to the detectives that she did work in her home.
Yes, sir.
When they took her out there to play with her, with the torturer from the security guard, they knew she was working, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you knew that by the next day, even the evening of the 16th, they knew there was nobody living in apartment 210 in the Sawgrass apartment, right?
That was under investigation. That's correct.
And that this made-up name, this fictitious name of Zenaida Hernandez Gonzalez, there's no such person by that name or combination thereof that lived in that apartment, right?
That's correct.
Or had ever lived in that apartment.
To my knowledge, in the investigation, that's we never
So
defined
they
someone.
knew all that within 24 hours, didn't they?
Yes, sir.
And they didn't ask you knew anything about another fictitious person, Jeffrey Hopkins, and Lewis, you didn't know anything about that.
I'm familiar with the investigation. I know there was a former co-worker, supposedly.
All right. So then what you're saying is costs related to Corporal Edwards that went on from the time that they knew about the lies, which was at least by the July the 16th or 17th, all the rest of his investigation is related to the general investigation of the homicide and so forth. Is that right?
We were still investigating a missing person at that time. We didn't know what happened to Kaylene at that point.
Well, what you knew was that the items alleged in the indictment were no longer mysteries to law enforcement. They had admissions, didn't they?
I don't know what admissions are. All I know is we didn't know because Miss Anthony she was telling us untruths, which caused us to go in different directions.
You knew when she wasn't telling the truth about working at Universal. She admitted it, and detectives proved it with the Universal people on the 17th day of July. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, sir, but doesn't mean we stop looking for her. I mean, just because Miss Anthony was telling us untruth, we still have to try to find a live Kaylene or the remains. We didn't know which direction we were going to find at that point.
And so, though, as to the charges in the indictment, these were already established as not being true, therefore alleged crime committed by the 17th of July. Even though we kept looking, you knew that those as charged were true.
You asked my opinion about that because I'm a little confused because on July 15th, if Miss Anthony would have told us that Kaylene drowned, that would have been it. We would have had probably three people on the scene, but we didn't know where she was, so that's why we had 50 plus detectives involved in this case.
How would that have changed, sir? The claim in count for that she lied about saying she worked at Universal Studios during 2008. It doesn't do with this.
No.
All right. And the same with the fictional Zenaida, and the same with the fictional Hopkins and Lewis, and the same with the fictional telephone conversation.
She lied.
All right, thank you. Now, I'll bet you that during the lunch hour, you have participated with the prosecution in trying to fix this 1,000-hour error for Ms. Ryder, did you?
The only thing the state requested of me is to have Ms. Roddick appear at the court today at 1:30.
So, eventually she's going to come in here after she's done and say that this was some kind of mistake.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to counsel asking this witness to speculate.
You talked to her?
I asked her to be here at 1:30. I did not speak to her. I spoke to Captain Nancy Brown, and I asked her to relay to Ms. Roddick to be here at 1:30, which she did.
You tell her why?
I just said that the state's requesting your presence here.
Have you had an opportunity to look through the rest of these investigative expense reports over the break?
I looked at the one that you pointed out in question just to see where I kind of missed that one, and I think I have an idea how it happened. And sir, could I go back? I did talk to Carrie. Captain Brown asked her to come down, and then she called me to ask me what courtroom it was in, and I told her 6D.
You have various different ones in your expenses of people involved in the recovery of the remains after he should have left the grave.
Mostly crime scene personnel. I mean, those, yeah.
Bear with me, Judge.
Yes, sir.
Not even we don't need to. Would you agree with me, sir, without going through each one of these, that from that report to the end of your package that the vast majority of the time being claimed is for CSI in dealing with the recovery of the remaining from suburban drug. And lab work related there too.
Second to missing persons, it looks like forensics does have the second amount of cost investigation.
I think that's all the questions I have.
Ready to wrap?
As a result of the lies for which Ms. Anthony was convicted, did the Orange County Sheriff's Office commence an investigation into the whereabouts of Kaylene Marie Anthony?
Yes, we did.
Did it matter to the Sheriff's Office whether or not Kaylene Marie Anthony was alive or dead in conducting the investigation?
No, ma'am, we just want to find her.
You had mentioned earlier something about if Ms. Anthony had not told these lies that were the genesis of this investigation and told a version that included that the child had drowned in the pool, that the Sheriff's Office would not have conducted a massive investigation into Kaylee's whereabouts. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
How much time would the Sheriff's Office have expended if Miss Anthony told anyone that the child had drowned and where the child was located?
Well, unfortunately, here in Florida, we have quite a few child drownings, and as the lieutenant of the homicide, I experience a lot of them. Typically, we have a patrol deputy would come out and take the initial report, a detective would come out to do the investigation, and a crime scene person would come out to document the scene. Typically, we're usually on the scene for about 2 hours.
Which would result in manpower hours of...
6 hours, roughly.
And instead, the Orange County Sheriff's Office spent tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours, thousands of hours, attempting to locate Kaylee Anthony, whether she be alive or deceased, correct?
That is correct.
You had indicated that Ms. Roderick, a civilian employee of the Orange County Sheriff's Office?
Yes,
correct?
she works in missing persons as a civilian.
Had provided a timesheet to you, and you believe that there was a circumstance that caused you to overlook some aspect of that.
Yes, after reviewing it, it appears that she made a mistake. It should be for a 5-month period rather than a 15-day period. So it should have been from July 15th to December 2008, not July 31st of 2008.
Which was your initial request to all of the employees who had worked on the case to document their time from July through December, correct?
Yes, ma'am, and I have to apologize. I was more concerned with the accuracy of the numbers. I just assumed the time frame was correct. So I apologize for missing that.
Yes, sir. No other questions, John?
Recross as to those issues?
No, sir.
May the deputy be excused?
Yes, Lieutenant Zambors may be excused, Your Honor.
Lieutenant, thank you. You may be excused, sir.
I had indicated one more witness to the court, but I do have Ms. Roderick here, and I'd like to call her, and then the other witness that I had anticipated.
State may call the next witness.
The state would call Carrie Roderick.